I'm Chrissy and welcome to this episode of Chrissy's Cuisine. Today we're going to travel all the way across the world and we're going to go to Argentina. We're going to make a grilled flank steak with a chimichurri sauce that is going to melt in your mouth. And we're going to serve it with a side of very simple roasted heirloom tomatoes that we're going to touch with just a hint of garlic and a little bit of basil. So let's get cooking. The first thing we want to do is we have our beautiful flank steak here. Now, if you're not familiar with flank steak, it is from the underbelly, the flank portion of the cow. And typically it tends to be a little bit tougher piece of meat. So the key with making any flank steak, skirt steak, you want to go ahead and cook it at a very, very high temperature. And you certainly want to serve it medium rare. So with this, if you don't necessarily care for your meat medium rare, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to substitute the flank for the sirloin. But if you love your steak medium rare or medium, try this recipe. I promise it's a keeper. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our flank steak, which we've had setting at room temperature, and we want to generously coat this with kosher salt. Now the reason we're using kosher salt is it's much easier to control, and we're going to hold it up very high. And we're going to very, very, very liberally put our kosher salt on it. So we're probably using, on a piece this size, I would say about a quarter of a teaspoon of kosher salt. And then we're going to go ahead and put our fresh cracked black pepper on top of that. Coat it very nice and well. Give it a little pat. Flip it over and we're going to season the other side. We're going to let this set for a moment. So we've got both sides seasoned very beautifully. More of our fresh black pepper. And we're going to set this aside for just a moment. Now, in the interim, I have my grill started. The grill is getting very, very hot. I want the grill to be at about 500 degrees before I start this. The next step we're going to do is we're going to start our chimichurri sauce. Now, again, a chimichurri sauce is an Argentinian sauce, and it starts with flat leaf parsley. So you want to use Italian flat leaf parsley, and you're just going to buy a bunch of it. It comes in a bunch in the grocery store, and that's all you're going to need is one full bunch. We're going to give this a rough chop, only because we're going to be putting it into our little mini food processor. So let's go ahead and we'll get this in our mini food processor. And you might have to do this. I don't have a large food processor, so if you have a mini one like I do, you might have to do this in a couple of batches. Then we're going to put in 7 cloves of minced garlic. Because I'm going to do this in 2 batches, I'm only going to put half of it in for right now. To that, we're going to add in a tablespoon of red wine vinegar, a tablespoon of lemon juice, a teaspoon of fresh oregano. And again, when you're using a fresh herb, you always want to, if the recipe calls for 2 teaspoons or 2 tablespoons of a dried herb, only cut that in half when you're using a fresh herb, because fresh herbs are so much more stronger. If you were to use 2 tablespoons, it would really overpower it. So just only add 1 tablespoon. And then we're going to add in just a pinch of dried chili flakes and about a teaspoon of salt. Some fresh ground black pepper. And slowly we're going to drizzle in. We've got 3/4 cup of olive oil. And always try to find a good olive oil. And when you're buying an olive oil, make sure that if you're making one for a marinade, make sure that it says on the bottle that it's for marinades or salad dressings. Some of them are actually made for grilling and frying. And the difference is the temperature at which the oil is going to cook. it has a different smoke point. Plus, it has a much lighter flavor. So we want to use the lighter flavored one for our dressings. So let's go ahead and pulse this. Oh, and look, we actually do have a little bit more room, so we can put more of our parsley in there. Let's go ahead and pack that in. We're also going to add in 3 tablespoons of minced shallot. A shallot is very similar in taste to an onion. It actually is in the onion family. The only difference is it has a nice garlicky flavor, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to go ahead, finish pulsing this. Let's add it in the rest of our olive oil real quick. Put in the rest of our olive oil. And let's finish pulsing this up. We want this to come to a nice, fine, smooth sauce. So we're going to pulse it for about 90 seconds or so. Now, that's perfect. So we're going to go ahead and let this set for a few minutes. Now let's go out to the grill. Okay, so we've got our barbecue grill nice and hot. And we have our gorgeous piece of flank steak, to which we have coated with kosher salt and black pepper. We're going to give it a nice little drizzle of olive oil. And we're going to go ahead and put this on the grill. And we're going to let this cook. We're going to put this on high heat. Close the grill. And we're going to let this cook for about 5 minutes, flipping it once. Now, I want this to be cooked at medium rare. So medium rare is about 128 degrees. Actually, it's more like 130, but what you're going to want to do is pull the meat at 128, so that way when it rests, it's still going to continue to cook. And one really good rule of thumb to use, and literally it is a rule of thumb, when you're cooking your meat, you can use the thumb and forefinger test to tell how your meat is done. If you put your hand like this and touch right here, relaxed, touch your palm, this is rare. If you put your index finger, that's medium rare. Middle finger, medium. Ring finger, medium well. Pinky finger, well. So that is a good way to test and see if your meat's done. Press on your meat if it feels in any of these ways. That's how you know. Remember, rare, medium, medium well, well done. So while this is cooking, let's go back in and start with our tomatoes. Now we're going to start with our tomatoes. We're going to go ahead and take about a tablespoon of olive oil and put it in our pan and get this heated up. Now personally, I like to use a liquor pourer on the top of my bottle of olive oil. It allows me to control exactly how much comes out, so that way I'm not pouring too much and I'm not pouring too little. So that's a good little trick. Then we're going to add in our cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes. I like using the heirloom variety just because they're pretty and just add some color to the plate. So we're going to drop these in there. They're nice. The olive oil's nice and hot. Remember, put them in away from you, so we don't want to burn ourselves. And then we're going to take some fresh basil, and we're just going to roughly tear this up with our fingers. It's just going to give us a nice little hint of flavor. And some kosher salt. I would say probably about 1/8 of a teaspoon, really just a pinch. And we'll go ahead and put some fresh black pepper on this. Now, here's the trick, and the best part is we're going to add some garlic to it. Now, I want to show you a trick with garlic. If you've ever peeled garlic and you know it sticks to your fingers, it really can become tedious to peel. If you take your garlic and you soak it in a bowl with warm water, not hot, but warm water for 15 minutes prior to cutting it up, watch how easy this peel is going to come off. Look at that. No sticky fingers, nothing. You've got a perfectly peeled piece of garlic. Took you 2 seconds. So now what we want to do is we've got just a regular microplaner or grater, and we're going to grate 1 clove of garlic right into our tomatoes. And then let's just grab a fork and we'll give these a little bit of a stir. All we really want to do is blister the tomatoes. It's going to bring out the sweetness, and we've got that beautiful hint of garlic in here, a little bit of salt. And this is going to be a gorgeous side dish. So we're going to let these blister. In the meantime, let's go check on our steak. I think it's almost done. So we've gone ahead and taken our flank steak off the grill. We let it cook approximately 4 minutes per side so we could get it to 128, and we wanted it medium rare. We pulled it off, and now we've let it rest for 5 minutes. The reason you want to let your steak rest, or any form of beef rest, and pork as well, is you want the juices to redistribute. Now, if you're looking at any type of steak that tends to be grainy, such as a flank steak, a London broil, any cut of meat that's a little bit tougher, what you want to do is you want to slice it very thinly and across the grain. So if you look here at the steak, you'll see the grains going this way. Usually the grain goes with the length of the meat, so you can see the grains. So what we want to do is we want to cut across the grain. So we're going to take our knife, very sharp, and we're going to start at an angle. We want to slice it thinly, nice and beautifully thin, at an angle like this. And this is going to help keep it nice and tender. Once again, if you prefer your meat to be well done or more on a well side, do not use a flank and or a skirt steak because they tend to be a tougher portion of meat. However, with that said, even though they are tougher, when you cook them in this preparation, they have such a beautiful beefy flavor. It's kind of the king of all steaks, really. So we've got this sliced nice and thin. Let's check on our tomatoes. Our tomatoes are nice and roasted. We've got that beautiful caramelization on them. So we're going to go ahead and plate our dish. So let's go ahead and put some tomatoes on our plate. Oh, look at how pretty they are. And we're going to put some of our gorgeous flank steak on here. And let's top it with a little bit of our chimichurri sauce. And for our tomatoes, just because we can, we're going to put a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano on them. Now let's give this a try, shall we? If you've never had chimichurri, please, please, please try this. It is a wonderful accompaniment to any steak or lamb. And actually it works very well with pork as well. But you're getting the beefiness of the steak, the very lightness of the parsley with that great punch of garlic. Let's give the tomatoes a try. When we cooked them in the pan the way we did, we really brought out the sweetness of the tomato. A little hint of garlic, and that Parmesan cheese just throws it up over the roof. It is absolutely divine. See you next time.